Now let's take this movement routine and look at the elements of the core and how they're being used to perform each of these fluid motions. Let's begin with your left foot forward, right foot back, all facing forward, body facing forward. What we're going to do from this position is rise directly by pulling up into a standing position. So I'm standing on my left leg because of the actions of the core here on the left side. My right leg is hanging just behind, and I need to close the upper part of the core to bring the right foot into position. Now I can shift the weight so I'm standing in a neutral, aligned, balanced position with my weight on my right leg. I know it's on my right leg because I just put it there. Now I know I can step out to the side by collecting my leg, stepping out, and then shifting the weight to the left leg. As I step out, I'm using the upper part of my core and hip flexion on the left to shift my weight all over my right leg. Very balanced. I'm now going to use the upper part of the core on the right to direct my leg outwards, and then the core on the left to close the toes to the ground. And then I'm going to shift the weight into a shoulder width position. I now have my root on my left leg using my left lower abdominal muscles. My right hip is flexed and my upper part of the core is turning clockwise. We're going to begin to pivot continually in a clockwise motion, turning 90 degrees with each pivot. We're going to execute the pivot by turning the waist, the upper portion of the waist, to the left. This is counterintuitive because it's going to make me turn to the right because my right hip is pulling the body to the right by flexing. This right hip flexion has a clockwise pull to the body, but you can't see it because of the position I'm in. Once I turn my upper part of the waist to the left, I remove the weight from the right leg, allowing the right hip to pull the body around to the right. Then I'm going to shift the weight without rising, and then I'm going to close in a shoulder width stance. I'm back now in the original position I was in a shoulder width stance, only facing in a 90-degree angle to the right. We're now going to repeat this movement, pivoting, shifting the weight with no rise, close the left side to the right side, and settle the weight. Pivot, shift. By the time you shift, your knee should be above your ankle, not forward. There should be no leaning. And now collect using the collect using the left side of your core, turning to bring the left leg forward. And then we pivot. Notice the arm drops. This follows the hip motion as it sinks in. And then as I shift forward, the arm begins to rise. And then as I close the left side to the right, this arm will come forward. And we'll just walk through that in a slow, continuous fashion, trying to do this with no effort. Float through the movements. feet should always be facing forward in the direction of motion with each pivot. On the final pivot, we're going to rise the body up, pulling from the right side of the core, pulling straight up, just like we did in the beginning, and then using the left side to close the foot. Shift the weight to a standing position. Now I'm standing with my weight on the left. And now I can lift up, shifting complete weight to the left, step out using the core, place the toes using this side of the core, and then shift the weight. Now we're going to do the exercise in the opposite direction, turning counterclockwise. Now I'm going to rise up, pulling from my left hip. I'm not going to push. I'm not pushing off with the right leg or pushing off with the left leg. Pushing is from the glutes in the back. We're going to pull from the hip flexors, pulling the body forward, and at the same time using our lower abdominal muscles to tilt the pelvis back in the opposite direction from the hip flexion, which keeps it vertical. We have a forward motion from the hip flexion, and we have a posterior motion from the lower abdominal rotation. The final result of both of those combined movements is simply to lift the body up without a feeling that you're pushing down off the ground. It should feel very relaxed. After you've practiced the pivoting motion multiple times and feel comfortable with it, what I want you to then practice is shifting the weight and feel how your center of gravity is centered over your forward foot as you shift forward. So we've pivoted, and then now we're going to shift forward, flexing our right hip to pull the body forward, and at the same time tucking the left lower abs to pull the body forward to this position. The knee should be over the ankle. I should be relaxed and vertical. The pelvis is tucked on the left side, now rooting my left leg to the ground. This is where I can either close with the right side of the upper core to bring the right leg forward, or from the same position, this is the motion that you're doing before taking a step when you walk. So let's go back to this position. You're going to shift the body forward with no pushing from here. We're really pulling the leg forward. We should feel center of gravity evenly distributed over the forward leg, and now we're going to lift forward from the muscles in the front of the hip to pull the body into a nice relaxed low impact walk. And then we'll do this on the other side, pivoting, shift the weight, and now lift from here to make the body begin to walk. This is how we walk on level ground in a smooth, fluid fashion without having to use force. We should be using our core to coordinate the motion of the body in a way that allows us to flow without having to do any force of the glutes to push off the ground. We need the glutes to push off the ground when we're moving uphill. But when we are walking on flat ground, we should be able to glide or float with no pushing back. we just glide through the movement, placing the heel gently with each step, rolling through. This roll through after we place the heel, this weight change here is the same as we were doing during our pivoting exercise, and then we step forward. Place the heel, change weight, and we move on. I generally call this turn, place the heel, tuck to shift forward, and lift from the hip to step. Turn, tuck, lift, turn, tuck, lift. We don't need to push off the ground like this when we're walking. Simply flow. In the second exercise, we're beginning with the same position with my root on the left leg. And then instead of pivoting the foot outwards, we're going to pivot the foot inwards. This motion is using extension from the glutes. I'm going to push off the ground, but at the same time I'm going to change my root from the left to the right by changing my lower abdominal rotation, or my belly button movement, from the left to the right as I push. That's going to allow me to unroot my left leg to pivot freely because the root is over here. As we do this, you're going to notice that my intention of the eyes and the body still stays relatively forward, because I'm going to continue turning, or actually change my turn from the upper torso from this motion to this motion as I do the pivot. So I'm going to extend my left hip, I'm going to turn the upper torso to the left and my lower torso to the right to do this inward pivot. Now I'm going to shift the weight back, with my intention now going to the right, and then I'm going to finish the pivot by taking my upper torso like we did in the beginning, the first exercise, turn it to the right and allow the hip to pull the body around to finish the turn. Then we shift the weight and collect the same way we did in the previous exercise. Once we have shifted our weight now to our original position, we're going to pivot again, shift back with the intention going to the right, and then pivot the foot. As I begin to do this pivot, my intention goes to the right as I shift back to my left leg, and then moves around. We'll notice the difference between that and exercise number 3, where we're really going to focus on a balancing position by starting off with the same pivot, but instead of having my intention go to the right as I shift back, I'm going to have my intention go to the left as I shift back. Upper part of the waist and lower part of the waist turning towards my rear leg this time. Now to finish the motion, I'm going to turn the upper part of the waist to the right, and now I achieve this balanced position with my leg reaching forward. To place the foot, we're going to now just simply extend your right hip as you continue this motion, and you're going to lower and place, shift and collect like you did with the other motions. Pivot, shift back with your intention towards the left, then change. Again, my intention to the left as I shift back. In this position, I am trying to lift my right hip by flexing, but it can't lift until I finish the next part of the motion, which is changing the core rotation to here. That releases my right leg from the ground as it continues to use hip flexion. Now I extend the hip to place, shift. I could take a step forward from here if I wanted to by lifting from my right hip, but instead I'm going to close so I can do the exercise one more time. Pivot. So you can see intention to the left. Now, by turning to the right, I free up the leg. Work on balancing in this position. Feel the core motion. Right hip flexion, clockwise rotation of the upper part of your core, counterclockwise rotation from the lower part of your core, rooting your left leg. If you use the sequence correctly, you should be able to balance here with very little effort. And then extend the hip to place, change weight, and this time I'm going to walk forward by pulling from the front of my right hip. Now for the final exercise. This is going to be the forward and backwards walk, beginning in this position with both feet facing forward. I'm using my arm to reflect the motion of the upper part of the core. The lower part of the core, you'll be able to tell what's happening because my weight is always going to shift toward the leg that is rooted with the lower abdominal muscles. We're going to shift forward, rooting my left. I'm pulling forward with my right hip, which is flexing, but it's not going to lift up until I rotate forward from the left. This is just like that balance position we did in the previous exercise, but moving in a straight line. I'm going to extend the hip to place while continuing to reach forward from the left arm. Now I'm going to shift the weight, continuing to reach forward from the left arm, and then to get my leg up, I reach forward from the right arm, and then extend to place. Shift forward, switch the direction of the upper core rotation, and extend the hip. Now to go backwards, we're going to keep the core, the abdominal core, with the same orientation, and we're going to flex our right hip. The leg will lift with no retraction until we change the core rotation, reflected by my right arm. My leg or my foot is going to go parallel to my left leg at this point. I have a flexed right hip. To continue the motion going backwards, I'm going to extend the right hip while continuing to reach forward on the right upper core. Shift back. This is using the lower abs to pull the body back as I flex my left hip. The leg will retract when I switch the core rotation. Now I can reach back. Shift back using the lower abs. Collect the leg using the upper abs. Reach back using the right hip, extending glutes. Shift back. Collect. Reach back. Shift back. Collect. If I want to switch back to going forward, I'm going to change the core rotation from the upper core. It's almost like running in slow motion. And then now I'm going to reach down, shift, flow from the core, balancing positions are going to help strengthen your gluteus medius, which helps keep your leg from popping out this way and tipping your body. It's a very good exercise to work your balance and feel how the coordination of the upper and lower core, in addition to your legs, is required to make a really functional, balanced position. And then we're going to finish up there. Thank you for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, click the like button. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already a subscriber. Click on the bell to get notifications for my future videos. If you want to support the channel, become a member by clicking on the join button, or go to the website linked below and subscribe to either the Walking Code course or the Tai Chi Code course. Have a great day.